Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome back to the lab, your weekly source for all things indoor football league. Whether you're recalling the epic week that was, forecasting the week that is to come, or going over any other of the amazing goings on in this great league, you've come to the right place. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time again. It is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in as we preview the week that is to come, starting tomorrow on Saturday. For those of you who are new to the channel or to the Indoor Football League as a whole, warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, a passion that I've channeled into my current role as a lead IFL contributor over at a sports forum called Sports Coast to Coast. They are a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in complete coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams specifically. Whether you're looking for up-to-date team rosters, game previews, recaps, and all sorts of another analysis and hot takes, Sports Coast to Coast is your place to enhance your IFL fandom. I've included a URL to that site in the description below, so definitely check it out. There you will also find the written version of this piece that I put together and posted over at that site late last night. So without further ado, let's bring in our presentation piece here as we get set. Week 15 of the season, just 5 weeks remaining. Not much time for teams to try to kind of either cement their playoff status or potential playoff seeding. And Monica fully on board with it. Thank you so much for tuning in, Monica. Really do appreciate it. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. And don't you worry, we will get right on previewing each and every game shortly, once we cover some reflective pieces first here. So before we do get things rolling and go over our agenda for the evening, I do want to take a moment for all the viewers out there. Please continue to keep TJ Edwards in your thoughts and prayers. The reigning IFL, or the 2023, I should say, IFL MVP. For those of you who are unfamiliar or might not know, Edwards suffered a serious injury in last week's game for Tulsa at Massachusetts. Leg got mangled up on a freak accident sort of play late in the fourth quarter. Required him to be stretchered off the field, and it just took all of the life out of Tisonga Center last Saturday evening. Edwards has since posted on social media, seems to be in okay spirits, all things considered. But yeah, definitely keep on supporting him. TJ, I don't know if you happen to be listening to the show. Probably not. But if you are, know that we love you, we support you, and we're wishing you nothing but the very best in your recovery. And on a side note, it's on instances like this where I get a little bit frustrated with myself because, you know, it takes an injury like this to realize how much work and effort that players, coaches, and other team personnel put in to making each and every week of the Indoor Football League such an amazing, memorable experience. It's so easy to get so caught up in the thrill of the game, the touchdown passes, the over-the-wall action, where, you know, it's very easy to forget that, you know, especially in the cases of these players, they're putting their minds, their souls, and ultimately their bodies on the line. And so, you know, there's no guarantee that tomorrow comes. In the worst of situations. So for all of you those out there in any capacity working with the 14 teams of the league or the league office in general, know that we really do appreciate the work that goes into making this product the way that it is. Whether that work is out in the light or kind of more behind the scenes, we really do have your back as fans of this league. So that said, let's get into what we'll be talking about tonight. For those of you curious about the gift that I have chosen for this slide tonight, that is my dad successfully fielding a kickoff from one Josh Gable. Pretty good catch with that sort of velocity coming in for a guy that turned 57 3 years ago. So happy birthday, Dad. A bit belated on that light, but it is what it is. So just like that, we were catching more wins than we did losses last week. We had several amazing games, some pretty dominant performances scattered in there. We'll get to recapping each and every one of those games in just a moment here. We'll see how all of those results, which are very interesting to look at from a Week 14 large-scale view, we'll see how all of those add to the season-long tracker, discuss some trends there that we can potentially refer to when making our selections in the future. And once we kind of lay the land, we'll chart the course for Week 15. We've got 6 games, 5 Saturday and 1 on Sunday. And we will also try to cook up a 3-leg parlay, one that we have not successfully put together since Week 6, unfortunately. All right. Oops. I went one slide too far there. All right. Here we are, back in action. So Week 14, we had a few games kick off in the 7:05 p.m. Eastern window. We'll go over the Oilers and Massachusetts Pirates game first. This is a game where the Pirates, simply put, needed a win in order to cement themselves as a playoff hopeful. And the first half was very, very grimy, drag each other through the mud type of game. But the Pirates ended up piecing together another solid first half. They led 21-14 at the break. And then their defense kicked in the second half. They got a couple early stops in the second half, while the offense continued to stay red hot as they have been the past few weeks. They ended up opening a very large lead on the Oilers. It got up to as high as 22 or 23 points, I believe. And that really saw them through in this one. It's an impressive win over the Oilers, 58-37, the final score there. The game script kind of went against our under 76.5 pick, but that comes with the territory of picking the under at this low of a number. It had success for the most part in games in Lowell this season and for Pirates games in general. This one just happened to pan out as the second or third highest scoring Pirates game of the season. So our bet had no luck there, as opposed to our next game, which was the Quad City Steamwheelers and Jacksonville Sharks, and where the first meeting between these two teams was dominated by the Steamwheelers in Moline. Jacksonville returned the favor right back and then some at ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena over in the Sunshine State. Tyler Huff, who was named the Offensive Player of the Week, completed all but one of his 11 pass attempts, while absolutely dicing the Steamwheeler defense for 188 rushing yards and accounted for 7 of Jacksonville's 9 total touchdowns, which came on 9 drives. So offensively, this was the perfect game for Jacksonville. And that made the job for the defense substantially easier. One where they capitalized big time on a few different takeaways against the Steamwheelers, especially in the first half. And this one, the Sharks just coasted. The final score, 65-33. So whereas Jacksonville got stomped by 32 the week before, they go in against another playoff contender out in the East and get themselves a 32-point win, perfectly balanced as all things should be. In Indiana, the Green Bay Fishers traveling to Fishers to play the Freight, a game that a lot of bookmakers had Green Bay winning pretty convincingly. Hard to blame them with the way that Green Bay was playing, and also amidst the 9-game losing streak that Fishers was trying to buck. And this turned out to be a really memorable, really close game. I don't think either team got ahead by any more than 7 or 8 points, which actually was Green Bay's maximum lead in this game. Late in the fourth quarter, they had just turned Fishers over on downs, had the ball in their own territory, with the chance to get a touchdown and put themselves in cover territory for the first time all game. And we wound up with a fumbled snap and a recovery in the end zone for a safety. As Fishers got to Max Myler on the painted turf, got the 2 points there, ended up getting the ball back, score a touchdown inside the 1-minute warning. Green Bay dealt a touchdown right back at him with about 10 seconds to go. So it all came down to one play from about midfield for Fishers to grab a touchdown and possibly win the game. What ended up happening was the number 6 rated play on SportsCenter's top 10 the following morning. Vincent Espinoza, the new starter at quarterback for Fishers, hurling a pass in the middle, deep back of the end zone, where newly signed receiver Gurney Sloan hauled it in amidst a sea of Green Bay Blizzard hands. It was unbelievable to see, especially for Freight fans who have been waiting more than 2.5 months to finally see a win through, and they get it in the most epic of fashions here. The Freight's Hail Mary effort cements a 57-56 win over the Green Bay Blizzard, who had entered as the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. So this stands as one of the biggest upsets of the season, if not the biggest upset of the season, if we're being honest. In the 9 o'clock Eastern window, we'll start off with our Iowa at Vegas game. Here's another one that started out to be reasonably close, and I guess people were genuinely interested in the early going of this one. Iowa and Vegas traded the lead a few different times until an unfortunate fumble by Iowa resulted in a recovery by Vegas for a touchdown. That's where it all went wildly downhill for Iowa. They had trailed at that point, I believe, 28-24. That defensive touchdown for Vegas was the second of 6 in a 41-0 unanswered run. I think Vegas had 68 points before the third quarter even ended. So it was a complete breakdown from Iowa's defense, the exact sort of bounce back game that Jaden DeLaura needed after his rough first half in the prior game against the Bay Area Panthers. DeLaura accounts for 6 touchdowns. Wimbush gets 3 of his own, as the Nighthawks are the new single game record holder for points in a single game in the 2025 season. They just blast the Barnstormers here. 82-46 holds up as the final score. Our Vegas minus 470 money line bet cashes with ease, as Iowa remains winless on the road and just 1 win on the entire season. In Tucson, we had the Sugar Skulls host the Wranglers, a game where the Skulls had to win in order to keep their realistic playoff hopes alive, going up against a team that had already been eliminated prior to the start of this one. Can't help but think that's what prompted Northern Arizona's initial decision to give Caleb Lowe his first start since week 8. And you could see right away that Lowe was rusty in this one. Very limited success, only got 3 points in the 4 or 5 drives that he engineered, as Tucson blitzed out to a quick 27-3 lead. By the time that Northern Arizona put Ramon Atkins in the game and got their offense stabilized, it was just too late, as their defense could not stop the ground and pound rushing attack of Tucson, which got multi-touchdown performances out of 3 different skill position players. And it's another strong offensive showing from a Sugar Skulls team that still has its sights set on playoff football after missing out last year. They get this win over Northern Arizona 59-38. That makes it past the bookmakers mark of 82.5, which we had correctly predicted, to give us our second win of that 9 o'clock kickoff window. And then we had a couple of games on Sunday. First one to kick off was the Arizona Rattlers and the Bay Area Panthers down at SAP Center, a rematch of the 2 most likely heavy favorites to represent the West in August's IFL championship game. Usually when these 2 teams meet, there's a lot of scoring. And at 95.5, this was the highest implied total of the season. What we ended up getting was a scoreless first quarter, one in which Bay Area and Arizona just put the clamps down on one another. I think both teams had 3 completed drives in that first quarter, and nobody could muster any points to show for it. So we were tied at 0 in the first half. We were actually tied, or in the first quarter. We were tied at 10 at the end of the first half. And then Bay Area made a little bit more of a commitment to their running game, which ended up making the difference ultimately. They were able to score touchdowns on the majority of their second half drives, while the Arizona Rattlers got stopped on 4th down a couple of times, had a late interception from Snead while they were down 10. And Bay Area at that point was able to put things away from there. So thoroughly dominant showing from the Panthers in that second half, particularly on the defense, which is looking really, really scary in this past month. So Bay Area expanding their lead upon the Western Conference, defeating Arizona 37-24. It is the 4th consecutive loss, by the way, for the Arizona Rattlers, who once upon a time were 7-1 this season. Now staring down 7-5, and faint whispers of season collapse. Do they miss the playoffs? So we'll have to see how their season gets turned around if it does. Lastly, our later Sunday evening kickoff was the San Antonio Gunslingers and the San Diego Strike Force at Front Wave Arena. This is a game where the Gunslingers had to have it, and you could tell right away that they played with that mentality. They played very strong offense in the first half, ended up getting a takeaway late in the first quarter as well, where by about midway through the third quarter, they actually had a 9-point lead, well on their way to staging what could have been a really nice upset. But that San Diego offense under Nate Davis did not flinch one bit. They continued to score touchdowns until San Diego finally got its break defensively, which they did with an interception off Joaquin Collazo in the end zone. And from that point, San Diego pretty much just had to stave off any sort of San Antonio rally at the end. So they eventually ended up getting ahead by as many as 10 points. And that was where the margin was on San Antonio's final drive of the game. We needed a stand from the Strike Force and did not get it. San Antonio touchdown, Collazo to Naquan Murray with 30 seconds left, put San Antonio back in the range for them to cover. And that was all the scoring that she wrote in this one, in another game that eclipsed the century mark. We had quite a few of those this week. But for us, it's a painful way to tumble down to 4-3 from a potential record of 5-2 for the week. But San Diego gets another close win. It's 5 in a row now for San Diego. 53-49 is the final score. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the path that we took to a 4-3 week. So now we've had about a quarter of our losses on the season by just 3 points or fewer, and a little more than half by 8 points or less. So about half the time when we're losing, we're really one play away from turning that potential dud into a winner. It's kind of been a common theme throughout the season, but it still is and will always be a reminder of how tough it is to pick out winning wagers in this league. No winning week can be taken for granted. That much is true. All right, so our parlay in week 14 also coming up short, this time by 2 legs, with both our spread bets going very, very wrong. The Daquan Neal 9-0 cover streak is over after the Steamwheelers got blasted by 32 in Jacksonville. And we had picked Northern Arizona, a very respectable spread betting team this season, believe it or not, to cover at 5.5. Ended up losing to Tucson by 21 points. So San Diego's moneyline win over the Gunslingers was our only correct pick. And with the Gunslingers on bye for week 15, or the Strike Force rather, on bye for week 15, we're going to have to find another leg to kind of be our anchor this week. So that'll be an interesting decision to make once we do get to that point later in tonight's show. So here's our year-to-date progress in terms of net profit, or in my case, net loss, through the first 14 weeks of the season. So we're down just about 2 units on the flat method of betting, which is $10 per bet, and the weighted method, which you can check out over on my written piece over on the forum, that attributes different dollar amounts based on confidence level that each bet will hit. So we've also had a few weeks in a row where the flat method has turned out a net loss. So we've definitely been going the wrong way since we had our apex point out in week 11. So with 6 games this week, I'd surmise that a 4-win week gets us back on that upswing. So that is what we will go for in our quest to at least get close to our preseason goal, which was 6 units of net gain when this season concludes. And here's that same graph based on return on investment. So still below that 0 line for both methods, flat and weighted. Flat is around 2.5% below, while the weighted method is pretty close to 6% below. So still some work to be done, but a lot of ground to where we can make that up. So that's the philosophy heading in. All right, now let's talk about yearly results to date. For the average fan out there, this is mesmerizing. For the sharp betting minds out there, this is positively disgusting. Spread betting is split dead down the middle between favorites and underdogs covering the spread. Same deal applies to the over-under. Both have hit 41 times on the season out of 82 for an even 50% hit rate. Money lines favorites are doing very well, winning about 66% of their games, which is about the historical average since betting tracking began in the 2023 season. This is exactly what bookmakers are looking to do. They're looking to make this as even as humanly possible in order to make the most out of its house edge. So the question becomes, with things so even league-wide across the board, where the heck do we go from here? One thing that we can take a look at, the dominance of the home teams that have been winning 61% of the time outright and covering near 57% of the time versus teams that take their talents on the road. So if there's any matchups coming up in the future where there might be some more value on the team that's playing at home, especially in a very, very close matchup, we may have to find ourselves gravitating towards that even if it means a little bit more risk at taking an underdog on the money line if they are at home. So those will be some more of the value-based betting principles that we'll be looking out for. So we've got that trend. And another trend that really caught my eye was the success of the overs the past 3 weeks. As you can see down there in the notable Week 14 results, 15 of the 21 games have gone over the past few weekends. And this is a strange week in the IFL. We're looking forward to next week on 4th of July weekend. 8 of the teams competing on Saturday and Sunday are going to be on bye during the holiday weekend. So is that an aspect of the league's scheduling that we can capitalize on in terms of maybe riding this over trend? We'll see when we make our picks coming up. And here we are now with our team-by-team records. So a lot of these we have begun to spell out over the course of the past couple weeks here. But teams like Iowa, Fishers, and Arizona, extremely strong over bets all on their own. Quad City and Bay Area, fantastic against the spread. And then obviously we have moneyline records, which are just straight up records. So those are going to vary a little bit more wildly. But if you are banking on moneyline picks, it's always nice to look at the standings and see kind of where things fall. One notable trend here is that for Jacksonville Sharks games, the home team is covered in 8 straight games, which I found staggering when I looked at it again, but turns out to be true. Is that something that we could look to lean on? All right, and here are our bet results by team so far. So as far as that 7 win per team preseason goal, we could get 2 more teams to that checkpoint if we make correct picks on the games involving the Tucson Skulls, the Sugar Skulls, and the Fishers Freight. Meanwhile, we will want to bring up the rear a little bit with some of our teams that we're struggling on, notably Arizona, Vegas, Tulsa, and the Massachusetts Pirates, which we have a 3-8 betting record on so far this season. We've lost 5 units on Pirates games, which is absurd to think about. But that's how quirky this game can get sometimes in terms of like previewing it, picking it, and kind of seeing where things go. Perfect case in point here, Northern Arizona, the team that I've had the most success with betting this season. I already have double the amount of wins on their games compared to what I had all of last season when I went 5-11 in Wranglers bets. So it's quirky for sure. Very fun to look at. Very rewarding in terms of framing picks each week. So we will continue building that out here and see what we can do about solving some of those spread and money line bets where we have yet to put up a winner. All right, so disclaimer time. Lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook, though I did learn that lines are offered at Bet365 for those of you who are in eligible states over there. As always, we're going to stick with DraftKings for our evaluations here, though. This is a purely curiosity and entertainment product. It's not meant to be any sort of betting advice or a means to make money. If we happen to hit on most of our bets, it's just a nice little added bonus. There's no such thing as a lock or guarantee in the sports wagering world, as many of you probably know. If you would like to follow along with my bets, tailing or fading, you're more than welcome to do so, but please gamble responsibly. Practice safe gaming habits, which includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is teetering on problem gaming territory, there's a lot of resources that you can refer to online or for your specific state for help in that area. Haveagameplan.org and responsibleplay.org are a couple great examples that give gamers out there resources to cope with what they're going through as far as problems with gambling. So know that there is help out there if you do happen to be struggling mentally with it. And with that being said, it's time to go in. We've got 6 games to look at here. Let's make some picks. Have a little refreshment too while we're at it. Okie dokie. So 8 o'clock window. We've got, whoops. Let's minimize that. Get DraftKings back. Here we go. 3 games on the 8:05 window. We have the Massachusetts Pirates at Quad City, going to Vibrant Arena at the Mark in Moline, taking on the Quad City Steamwheelers, the number 1 seed right now in the Eastern Conference. The home side favored by 3.5. The over-under, the lowest of the week at 78.5. On the money line, the Massachusetts Pirates are plus 130 and Quad City is minus 155. What a test this is going to be for both teams here. In the case of the Pirates, they've been playing like arguably the best team in football since late May. They came back after 2 really bad losses as part of that Arizona road trip, have not tasted defeat since then. 4 straight wins, plus 83 point differential, with 2 of those wins coming against teams that they are trying to chase down for a playoff spot. Tulsa last week and Jacksonville to begin the 4-game winning streak. So Tom Manas, as his guys, playing spectacular ball right now. It's very much similar to the season trajectory that Manas had in San Antonio last season, trying to take the Gunslingers out of a 3-game hole in the standings and ended up bringing them back to 8-8. He'll obviously look to improve upon that with a playoff appearance here. A win here against Moline will go a very, very long way in doing that. The problem the Pirates are going to face is that Quad City is as good as any team in the IFL at leveraging home turf advantage. I'm fully expecting a rebound here from Daquan Neal and the Steamwheelers, particularly defensively, when they just simply got shelled for 65 against Jacksonville last week. Like, that almost never happens to this Quad City defense. So there's a lot to look at here. Pirates are obviously playing great, but Quad City is always great at home. Such a tough game to pick in that regard. We do have a thought here from Monica, thinking that the over at 78.5 is the way to go. I will say this much. The Pirates are 3-8 to the under. Or they've had 8 unders in their 11 games so far this season. They've gone over in each of their past 2. But the offense has been very impressive for the Pirates since they hired Mike Tatum as an assistant offensive coordinator. They've scored at least 40 points in each of their past 4 wins. And if they can keep that up against Quad City and get themselves to somewhere in the low 40s, I absolutely think this over can cash. So it creates that rare situation, right, where you have some historical stats that 100% suggest under, but you have some recent results with more updated rosters, for lack of a better term, and coaching staff that might suggest otherwise. I look at this minus 155 here for Quad City. I don't think we're going to get any better value in backing the Steamwheelers outright at home on the season. This is just way too good of a price. I hate fading the Pirates for how stellar of play that they've been able to put together on pretty much all facets over the past month. And this will be a great test here for them to go prove me wrong. like I said, Quad City is good on the road, but they aren't invulnerable. They have lost one game at Vibrant Arena this season. That was to the Tulsa Oilers. Granted, that was with Daquan Neal out as part of a multi-game absence. But the point remains, this is still a really, really tough Quad City team to take down on any given night. Yeah, I just I have a feeling that Quad City kind of rights their ship a little bit more here, and that turns out to be the difference. The Pirates have also never won in Illinois. They lost in 2023 and lost in 2024. So they have a little bit of historical demons to try to exercise as well. But let's start Quad City minus 155. See where that takes us. Another 8 o'clock kickoff tomorrow night. The Fishers Freight, who just snapped their 9-game losing streak, heading to Tulsa to play the Oilers. The home team favored by 8 in the hook. The over-under is 83.5. On the money line, Fishers is plus 220, while Tulsa is minus 270. And when talking about the emotional state of mind that both of these teams are in, you couldn't possibly put the Oilers and the Freight any further than the East is from the West, from the North is to the South. The Freight, with all the joys of that Hail Mary win against a legitimate championship contender in Green Bay, going up against a Tulsa Oiler team trying to figure out life post TJ Edwards. The likely immediate answer for Tulsa is Hassan Rogers. Rogers has been mainly used as a running back / receiver hybrid in the Oilers offense through this point in the season. But he does have fairly recent experience guiding a team at quarterback when he made a few spot starts for them as a member of the now defunct Duke City Gladiators last season. And he was one of the most promising young players in the game when he was playing at his best on a rather lackluster Duke City team, if we're being honest. But the point remains, Rogers still has an excellent supporting cast around him as far as skill position players. Martez Carter at running back, a receiving core that features Cole Blackman, Jerminic Smith, and Faison McClurge, just to name a few of the guys that they have, not to mention the couple of players that are deeper in that rotation or maybe on short-term injured reserve right now. Like, this Oilers offense can still hum. And Fishers, while they did win last week, they still allowed 56 to Green Bay. This still is a defense that they do have pieces in place like Tamar Hart, Christopher Oakley, but they struggle in terms of giving up points to opposition. Meanwhile, for the Freight, their offense had looked pretty darn good under Vincent Espinoza. I know, small sample size, but Espinoza was slinging it around as a member of the Columbus Lions of the National Arena League prior to his arrival in Fishers at the conclusion of that season. And they've got some good players that end of the ball too. They got JT Stokes. They got Shavaris Smith, recently signed Gurney Sloan. There's a lot of firepower here to where things can work reasonably well for Fishers if they're able to set the tone. And Monica saying, without Edwards, under 83.5 is your play. This is one where I actually take the other side, believe it or not. I still like the over here at 83.5. I really do believe that this is still a gettable matchup for Tulsa to where they can put up pretty close to mid-40s in terms of production. And you know that Fisher's playing with a newfound confidence, getting that losing streak snapped. They could be very live to make some noise in this one. Not for nothing, they also signed Felix Harper to their roster after he was released by Massachusetts last week. And who did the Pirates play last week? None other than these Tulsa Oilers. So fire up those conspiracy theories about picking Harper's brain on what did he see as he was on the sidelines of that game about Tulsa. How can they be exposed on defense? Similarly to how the Pirates exposed the Oilers for 58 points in that win last Saturday night. And not to mention that the past 10 freight games, of those 10, 8 have gone over. So they are a very, very good over team. And 83.5 is not that crazy of a number either. That's 12 total touchdowns. If we make all of our extra points, we're right here. So I'm going to go with that. I feel like both teams emotionally have the capability of putting in a performance that pretty much blows the socks off fans. That's just me. So I assert the over here at 83.5. And I'll tell you what, Monica, you can narc on me all you want if this turns out to be like a 40 to 35 type of game. All right, to wrap up the 8:05 window, the Jacksonville Sharks heading to Iowa to take on the Barnstormers. The Sharks are minus 14.5 point favorites with the over-under at 94.5. Jacksonville on the money line minus 500, and Iowa is plus 380. Very impressive team from last week going up against not a very impressive team from last week. This Sharks defense, when we've seen it at its finest, is a championship caliber team. What they did against Quad City can only be done by a team that can assertively put itself in the top 5 of the league on a pound-for-pound basis. Tyler Huff, in particular, coming off that offensive player of the week performance, he could do something very similar against this Iowa team that just gave up 82 to the Vegas Nighthawks. And it's not just a quick reaction to that one game as far as discussing teams' matchups against the Barnstormers. By far, this is the most generous defense in the league, giving up over 57 points a game. That is difficult to do. You're basically letting up 8 full touchdowns on a per-game basis, and you kind of start to see the downside of Iowa's fast tempo style of play. More possessions in the game means more opportunity for points to be scored. And even though Iowa's putting up a pretty respectable mark on offense, a lot of that has been game script. Just teams finishing off drives in 1, 2, 3 minutes. I will say this, though, about the spread bet. Even though it's not necessarily going to be my pick here, Iowa plus 14.5 is something that you can actually be talked into. I know there's risk in it, especially if the defense has one of its down days. But if you're looking for any sort of betting angle and a possible matchup to exploit here, Jacksonville checks off a lot of those boxes. For example, they are only 1-5 on the road against the spread and actually haven't covered away from Duval since week 1 of the season. They are also 2-4 as betting favorites against the spread. And you get them right above that key number of 14, which is 2 touchdowns. All you're asking Iowa to do is keep pace offensively and not go in one of those, 28, 35, nothing runs. That's really the bet that you're banking on here if you like Iowa on the spread. But my pick is going to be the over, even at this huge number of 94.5. The Barnstormers have proven all season long that they are not afraid to play games that have both teams crack the 50s if they can get their offense going at that clip. That perhaps explain why Iowa is the league's best over-cashing team with 9 of their 11 games going past the bookmaker's mark. The only 2 that didn't required extended offensive droughts by the Iowa Barnstormers that spanned at least 2 quarters. One said drought did come against these Sharks in Jacksonville, but I think taking the Sharks away from the comforts of Florida does level out the playing field here and makes things a lot more interesting than maybe people would initially think here. The Jacksonville offense is going to get theirs. We'll have to see if the Barnstormers can follow suit. But the past 4 games at Wells Fargo Arena have all gone past the century mark. I don't see anything to suggest that we don't make a run to make it 5 of 6 in this one. So in the final game at Wells Fargo Arena, before it gets renamed to Casey's Center on Tuesday, play Jacksonville, Iowa, over 94.5. All right, and now we look at the 2-game 9:05 Eastern kickoff window, starting with a lot of people's game of the week. Green Bay at Arizona. This is a pick'em, no spread, no handicap. Over-under is 96.5, and you're laying a dime, regardless of which side that you take, if you venture into the money line. Oh, Nelly, this is going to be a fantastic game. Green Bay comes in with MVP frontrunner Max Myler. The rest of that Blizzard offense leading the IFL in points per game, going up against a Rattlers team that suddenly finds themselves in serious need of a win. Something that very few of us would have thought possible just a few short weeks ago. But yeah, that losing streak for the Rattlers is up to 4 games, and without their very best effort here, there's real peril that this could be 5 games when everything is all said and done. These 2 teams have played each other before this season. It was earlier back in April at the Resch Center in Green Bay, a game where the Blizzard pretty much held the lead throughout the entire way. But Arizona got a late stop when it was a 1-score game, scored the game-winning touchdown with, I think it was 7 seconds left to rob Green Bay of a win and keep them undefeated on the season at the time. Definitely one of the front runners for Game of the Year candidate. Could we get another one of those results here with Green Bay going up against Arizona? Dalton Snead in the offense. They have scored in bunches this year. They are 3rd best in the league at 47 points per game. But they've been victimized a bit by the turnover bug in the midst of this losing streak. Just something that you don't see particularly often from the Rattlers. And another thing you don't particularly associate with them is their issues that they've had with penalties this season, as one of the most penalized teams in the Indoor Football League this season. So with everything there, you got a pretty evenly matched offense, pretty evenly matched defense. Where do we go from here? I think this game offers up a practical application of that significant home turf advantage that teams get offered in this league, at least for this season. So for those who have known me well, that have followed my season so far, this pick is going to be doomed. You just do. But I do believe we do get a very solid outing here from Arizona. If they lose this game, I don't think it's going to be by way of blowout. I see this game ending 1 possession either way. And with how these teams profile against each other, you have to believe that this game comes down to who has the ball last. So it makes a money line bet a little bit risky. But the season so far has told us there is significant value on the home team. So we're going to buy into that and see if it succeeds this time around. So Rattlers on the money line to snap the skid and put a little bit of flavor into the playoff race in both conferences. All righty, 9:05. The last game of Saturday that we'll go over tonight. The Bay Area Panthers on the road taking on the Northern Arizona Wranglers. largest spread of the season here. Bay Area favored by 17.5. The over-under is 84.5. Bay Area is a staggering minus 800 money line, while Northern Arizona plus 550 for what would easily be the biggest upset in the indoor football league this season. So as far as records go, this is the best team in the league and the worst team in the league going up against one another. So very, very very easy to see why the bookmakers rated out this game like this. The Panthers, throughout the entirety of the season, for all intents and purposes, have been the most dominant team in terms of offensive versus defensive efficiency difference. I believe their point differential per game is the best in the indoor football league as well. If it's not, it's definitely around number 2 or number 3. And that Panther defense has quickly found its form. It really has. It's been amazing to see if you're a fan out in California, and very scary if you're anywhere else. As I thought about this game, I thought for sure leading in that Bay Area spread was going to be my pick, because it shouldn't be that much thought. A classic don't overthink it situation, right? But 17.5, that is a lot of points to be given. Like, if we had a 45-28 game, that doesn't get the job done, folks. It doesn't. A spread like this almost requires the Panthers to put up at least 50 points, and that assumes a good game out of their defense. And while they have had put up 50 points in bunches in the early part of the season, they've only done so, I believe, once in the last 4 games. Granted, a much tougher schedule than this current matchup with Northern Arizona, but it still is tough to score in this league, and the Wranglers' defense is capable of coming up with some takeaways. The other thing that I really don't like about having to pick this game is the fact that we don't know who's starting at quarterback for Northern Arizona. And I believe that makes the biggest impact amongst this week's series of bets. Does Caleb Lowe get another shot to start? Or do the Wranglers decide to go Ramon Atkins for this full 60 minutes? The answer to that question, I believe, heavily influences confidence level in which side of either the spread or the over-under bet that you would take. So, with that said, I hate doing this. I hate taking Bay Area on the money line, because you, as my faithful viewers, come to me for some very good insight and analysis on these games. Where is there value in bets that you would not initially think value could be found? Like, anybody with working brain cells could figure out Bay Area money line is probably going to wind up as a winner. But I'll ask you this. How am I supposed to confidently go with any of these picks when we do not know what the Wranglers' plan is on the offensive side of the football? I do believe that if Ramon Atkins starts, he has shown enough firepower offensively to keep up with most teams in the league. Case in point, last week in Tucson, when Atkins got in after Northern Arizona fell behind by 24, the final margin of victory in that game for Tucson was 21 points, meaning that in Atkins' tenure, the Wranglers actually outscored Tucson. And Atkins has been doing this all season long since he made his season debut against the Massachusetts Pirates on May 18th. I just can't bet Northern Arizona plus 17.5 if I don't know that answer. And Monica saying the Panthers' last 3 games on offense have seen them score 44, 44, and 37. Those were against the Oilers, Nighthawks, and Rattlers, respectively. all three of whom are certainly playoff caliber teams. We'll probably be seeing them play in August. And Monica also thinking the game goes under 84.5. Again, I think a long way to answering that question is going to be answered right at kickoff when we know which Wrangler signal caller gets the green light. So this is a pick I hate, but I hate every other pick on this board more. So give me Bay Area outright to win. That'll be more or less our free square for the week. And our Week 15 finale on Sunday out in the desert. The Vegas Nighthawks traveling to Tucson to play the Sugar Skulls, a game where Vegas is favored by 5 in the hook. The over-under 86.5. On the money line, Vegas is minus 205, and Tucson is plus 170. What a game for both teams. And you'd better believe that both of them are going to have their eyes glued to the TV or the monitor or the tablet or what have you, figuring out what the result is of the Arizona Rattlers game the night prior. Because with a Rattler loss, this gets extremely interesting for both teams. In the case of the Sugar Skulls, you could gain a game on the standings, and you could suddenly be right back to within a game of both the Rattlers and the Nighthawks, because the Nighthawks are also a team that they're trying to chase down as part of that playoff hunt. On the Vegas side of things, a win divides you further from that cut line and the 5 spot. So this is going to be an extremely terrific game. One where the stakes could be really heightened by both teams, I guess irregardless of that Green Bay, Arizona outcome, but better believe with the Rattler loss that things can get really, really wild here at a Tucson Convention Center. Vegas, at the moment, seems to be rolling along with Jaden DeLaura. He had a great game against Iowa, got that confidence right back after his first rough one of his career against the Panthers. Would have to imagine that he gets the nod again. And now you're going back, throwing Antonio Wimbush, Quentin Randolph, CJ Winham. A lot of those Vegas Nighthawk players that were on this team in 2024, when they made the trip to Tucson and ended up losing to the Sugar Skulls in overtime, which ended a bid for a perfect season for the Nighthawks. So you'd have to imagine that's in the minds a little bit of those players to try to get back at the Skulls for that upset. And on the Tucson side of things, we've seen what they can do when they can establish a run game. And that's going to be key against the Nighthawk defense. That's among the top 3, top 4 units in the team in terms of rushing yardage allowed per game. So very intriguing matchup both ways. Lots of matchups here you can point to and say, wow, this is going to be some insanely fun football. The Skulls at plus 5.5, Monica bringing up here. Honestly, not sure where you're going with that double negative, if you would or would not take the Skulls at that plus 5.5 number. I ended up going a different route, though. Instead of the spread, I'm looking at the over-under here, and I'm taking the high. I'm taking the high in this game. I just think both offenses are rolling right now. And I applied the same argument to last week's Tucson game when they hosted Northern Arizona. And both teams put up offenses in bunches in the second half to get us across that number. Vegas, they have so many guys that can just go nuclear on you if you're not careful. And Tucson, while they've been scoring really, really efficiently offensively, have also allowed opposition to score on them quite a bit on the defensive end. So that trend that we saw a bunch of earlier in the season with like almost every Tucson game going under, the way that things are set up right now, that is becoming a thing of the past, friends. It really is. And, Vegas has a bye next week. So, they're going to pretty much give everything that they've got in order to make this a win, especially with that aforementioned context of the playoff race. And Monica's saying probably take the Skulls on the points. Certainly an understandable stance, Tucson should be the more desperate team of the two by virtue of being lower in the standings. They're just going to have to go out early, see if they can land on an early punch in this bout. But I do think we're going to have point scoring in bunches here to continue with the recurring theme so far. These past 3-4 weeks of games just blitzing by for point totals. So for the second consecutive game in Tucson, give me Nighthawk Sugar Skulls over 86.5. All right. So with that completes my spiel on my single game picks. Now to discuss the 3-leg parlay of the week. Here's where my mind was at for this one. I'm starting off with Pirates and Steamwheelers. It's not often that I put Pirates games in my parlays for reasons. But I'm actually going to go with their spread here. I know I went Quad City money line on my single game bet, but betting this way offers a potential path to where both of these events can occur. Recall, at this spread, if Quad City were to win by a field goal or less, 1, 2, or 3 points, the Pirates do manage to cover this spread. And we're also talking about a team that's been among the very best in the IFL, actually the best team in the IFL, in point differential since week 10. So anytime that we're able to kind of take points on a team like that, it doesn't really matter who they are, what you call them, what you label them. It stands as a reasonably solid pick in the end, or at the very least, a very justifiable one. Could very well be a scenario where it's a tie game and the Steamwheelers have the ball, send Kaplan to kick that winning field goal, and lo and behold, we have a winning leg here and our money line bet holding up as a winner as well. But the other thing with the Pirates this season is the underdogs have been an absolute cash cow. 9-2, both straight up and against the spread. So is that a trend that continues here with this game out in Moline? A very high stakes one at that. Oh, keep that there. For my second leg, I look at this Bay Area, Northern Arizona game, one which Monica put her opinion on as well. Bay Area and Naz going under 84.5. This is where I put that pick. Daisy, get down. Sorry, my cat was swatting at the screen. But in any event, I think under 84.5 is a reasonably solid play here. Those last 4 games that the Bay Area Panthers have played, they've limited the opposition to basically 30 points per game. A lineup that has featured insanely high upside offenses like the Vegas Nighthawks, the Tulsa Oilers, and the Arizona Rattlers, all of whom could really light it up on any given evening. So right now, the Panthers are playing championship football on the defensive side of things. So it goes to wonder whether it's Lowe at quarterback, whether it's Atkins at quarterback. Does that answer really matter if Bay Area puts in one of their vintage performances of the season either way? I will say that Panther offense seems like it's due to explode, so there is some risk carried there. But Bay Area is 3-1 to the under in their last 4. The only over was that Tulsa game that scored 85 points. So I'm willing to put this back into the parlay and see if it winds up cashing for us. And lastly, to cap off the parlay for Sunday, I know I've thrown in one of these types of bets each week for the past 3-4 times now. But give me Vegas on the money line at minus 205. This has been a tough season, obviously, for the Vegas Nighthawks. They are 7-5, but they've had some very close, agonizing losses as part of that sequence as well. I just think pound for pound, they've been the better team of the two. They've got the higher upside, they have the higher ceiling, and honestly, right now, a much more consistent defense than what Tucson has offered throughout the season. That's not to discredit the players on Tucson. They have very, very good players that side of the ball, including the reigning Defensive Player of the Week, John McMillan. They do have Ahmad Lyons, who has also won that honor over at the defensive back spot. But this is more than an individual game. It's a full team effort, 8 players that side of the ball. And more often than not, in the past month plus, Tucson's been carved a little bit. So I do see a matchup advantage there for the Nighthawks. So they are going to kind of be my anchor for this parlay. When put together, those 3 legs come out to be plus 442. So basically a 9-2 payout. A $10 bet here results in a $54.22 win if all 3 do happen to hit. Again, we're looking for our first parlay winner since week 6. So I do believe that this one stands a chance to show up green when all is said and done. So to recap this parlay, we have an 8:05 game on Saturday with the Pirates covering at a field goal plus the hook. A 9 o'clock game with Bay Area, Northern Arizona staying under 84.5. And the Sunday game with the Nighthawks taking care of business as favorites against the Tucson Sugar Skulls, which that result could more or less set in stone the 4 playoff teams in the Western Conference. So Vegas minus 205 to piece this one all together. Again, a $10 into 54 and change proposition if you take it. All right, so that is going to do it for tonight's installment of Wager Wednesday. I want to thank everybody so much for hopping in, including this little bundle of love right here. Hello. So again, thanks so much for tuning in. If you do test your luck on the IFL markets this week on the betting front, I wish you the very best. And Daisy says hello too. With all of that, I wish you the best of luck, and I will see you at the cashier. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the weekend.